I never thought we would start 2023 off with the downfall of one of the most influential creators in adult animation. Ever since he was charged for domestic abuse, Justin Roiland was fired from everything, including Adult Swim and Hulu. Since then, people would argue regarding the recent creative contributions Roiland has done in his shows, especially for Rick and Morty. So, do shows like Rick and Morty need Justin Roiland nowadays? And the answer to that is, not really, no. According to multiple people who worked or are working on Rick and Morty, they said that Roiland did contribute a lot during the beginning, and was very collaborative with his co-creator Dan Harmon. But then, when Rick and Morty was proven to be a hit and got renewed for a season 2, Dan Harmon decided to take the show a little more seriously and brought on board some of his community people to work on the story. After that move, Roiland's interest in working on the show significantly plummeted since they wouldn't let him work in his crazy edgelord way. To which, from season 3 onward, the creative contribution from Roiland, either as a writer or a show creator, pretty much became non-existent. In fact, it would be rare for Roiland to actually show up at the studio. And when he does, it's usually to go and give a studio tour for a celebrity, or to just completely goof off. In fact, the people who worked on Rick and Morty actually said that they get more done when Justin Roiland is not there. As for his contribution as the voice of some of these characters, even for that, he barely shows up at the studio. Most of the lines that he records for his series were done at home. And of course, the same can be said for his other shows like Solar Opposites and Koala Man, where most of the people who worked on that series have never even met Justin Roiland, not even through Zoom. So not only did Justin Roiland not contribute to anything creatively on shows like Rick and Morty for years, but he reduced himself into a problematic voice actor that just needed to go. Back in the 1980s, one of the biggest animated shows, or even one of the biggest shows ever on television, was Muppet Babies. And a signature trait of the series was that the babies would use their imagination to explore live-action worlds, rather it be clips from stock footage, television, or even from popular movies. To which I can imagine with the copyright issues is why we have yet to see the original Muppet Babies series on Disney+. But with that said, did you know that one of them they managed to slip in was an X-rated movie? Specifically, the 1974 X-rated parody, Flesh Gordon. And not only did they slip in a clip from that film in Muppet Babies, they did so twice. One time was in the episode Babes in Troyland, and the other was in the series finale, 8 Flags Over the Nursery. But of course, they didn't show anything explicit in the show. In fact, the only thing that they showed from that movie was the big stop-motion monster from the feature's climax. But still though, you can't help but wonder, how did the babies manage to slip in an X-rated movie in their imagination? Did they find some of Nanny's secret videos and not tell anyone about it? If that's the case, then I can understand why that's a secret that they don't want to share with anyone. Do you know which animated film has so far won the most Oscars? Well, to answer that question, let me give you another animation fact. There is no such thing as an animated film that won 3 Oscars or more. Yes, so far, the most Oscars that an animated feature has received is just 2. And there is an entire list of films that got that achievement. These include Pinocchio, Fantasia, The Little Mermaid, Beauty and the Beast, Aladdin, The Lion King, Pocahontas, The Incredibles, Up, Toy Story 3, Frozen, Coco, and Soul. Also, notice how in that entire list, all of these films are either from Disney or Pixar. Yes, there have been some non-Disney animated features that won an Oscar, but so far none of them have gotten more than 1. I'm not saying this is Disney's fault here, but it does show how much the Academy cares about animation. I don't know about you, but as an animation fan, now I know how Chris Rock felt. You want to know something else about the Oscars? Out of all the categories in the Academy Awards, and not counting any of the honorary awards or special achievement awards, animated films have only won in 3 categories. Yes, they would get nominations in several categories, including Best Picture, but the only wins that they got were just in 3. Of course, there's Best Animated Feature, then there is Best Original Song, and Best Original Score. That's it. On a side note, The Prince of Egypt is the only non-Disney animated feature to ever win an Oscar outside of Best Animated Picture. And The Incredibles Turtles is noted to be the only animated feature so far to win an Oscar outside of those three categories, where not only did it win Best Animated Feature, but it also won for Best Sound Editing. I don't know about you, but I feel like there's a pattern going on, and they all lead to the same conclusion that the Academy just doesn't care about animation. Or at least, not enough to give them the credit that they deserve. As expected, after all the wins that it got from other awards, Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio finally won the Oscar for Best Animated Feature. But did you know that this win comes with some historical significance? After being nominated for several years in a row since Klaus, this is the first time that Netflix finally won an Oscar in the category. This is also the first time since Wallace and Gromit: The Curse of the Were-Rabbit that a stop-motion animated film won an Oscar in the category, which also makes it the second stop-motion film to ever win an Oscar for Best Animated Feature. And most importantly, Guillermo del Toro is the first person ever to have an Oscar for both Best Animated Feature and Best Picture. Not at the same time, of course, but still an admirable record worth noting. Congratulations to the entire Pinocchio team for the movie itself and all the wins that it got. Bikini Bottom from SpongeBob SquarePants is one of the most popular locations in cartoon history, right up there with Springfield, Quahog, Bedrock, and South Park. It's so popular that every resident living in the city is recognizable. But do you know who is the most popular fish in Bikini Bottom? And I don't mean any of the main characters in SpongeBob. I mean the most popular random fish who mainly shows up in the background. Well, after doing some research, I was surprised to find that it's actually this guy. As of 2023, this guy has so far appeared in over 190 episodes of SpongeBob. Not far behind in second place is this guy, whom fans know as Fred. He has appeared in so far over 170 episodes. This is largely thanks to how he is associated with the popular running gag, My Leg. And in third place, it goes to this guy, who has so far appeared in over 140 episodes. You may know him more for being a little more cranky, including commenting on Mr. Krabs' big meaty claws in Bang Geeks. It goes to show that there are no small parts, only small fishes just living their life in Bikini Bottom. If you know your Disney history, then you know that Walt Disney was the first voice of Mickey Mouse. He did so all the way up to 1947, where after Fun and Fancy Free, he retired from the role because he was getting increasingly busy, and the quality of his voice was getting increasingly damaged due to his chain-smoking habit. However, Fun and Fancy Free was not the last time that Walt Disney voiced Mickey Mouse. That would actually be the Mickey Mouse Club. During the animated segments where Mickey himself would greet the guests, Walt Disney himself temporarily came out of that retirement to voice Mickey once again. However, need I remind you again that part of the reason why he stopped voicing Mickey Mouse was because after the years of continuously smoking, now he starts to sound like a smoker. And as a result, well, let's just say that he sounds a little different than before.
Oh boy! Whoa, steady! Whoa! Hi, Musketeers!
Hi, Mickey!
Well, here we go again. So hang on. Anything goes. You ready?
Ready!
Then let the show begin.
I mean, he did try, but listening to that, Mickey, is just a reminder of why you should never smoke. I know many of you are as excited as I am for the release of the Super Mario Bros. Movie. But did you know that this is not the first time that Mario entered the world of animation? You're probably familiar with the animated shows by DiC back in the late 1980s and early 1990s, including the Super Mario Bros. Super Show. But that one is actually not Mario's first time. Back in 1986, Japan released a movie called The Super Mario Bros. The Great Mission to Rescue Princess Peach, which is also noted to be one of the first ever animated movies to be based on a video game. But even that is not the first time that Mario appeared in a cartoon. That title belongs to the 1983 animated anthology series Saturday Supercade by Ruby Spears Productions. One of the segments was based on the arcade game Donkey Kong, where Mario and Pauline try to capture the gorilla after he escaped the circus. And that is where you find Mario's first animated appearance, to which he was voiced by Peter Cullen.
Give it up, Donkey Kong. I'm used to your tricks.
After watching this movie, it inspired me to go and check out all the interesting trivia about it. So here are 5 fascinating facts about The Land Before Time. The original concept that Don Bluth and Steven Spielberg thought up for this movie was that this was going to be Bambi, but with dinosaurs. Originally, all the dinosaurs would have been mute, but it was decided later on to make the dinosaurs talk so that the movie can be more appealing to children. Out of all the characters in the original, Rooter is the only one who does not show up in any of the sequels in any way. The original running time for this film was 80 to 82 minutes, but they had to cut it down to 69 because there were some scenes that were going on for way too long, and others felt like they were way too intense for children. And finally, out of all the movies in the franchise, the first is the only one that is not a musical. If you're a fan of Lilo and Stitch, then there's a good chance that you know that throughout the years, Stitch doesn't just hang out with Lilo. Throughout Stitch's history, there have been several different TV shows from different countries in which Stitch hangs out with a different little girl in an entirely different place. There was the anime where Stitch was in Japan, and there was the Chinese animated series where Stitch found himself in China. But the weirdest place that Stitch found himself in is not anywhere in animation. It's actually in a manga. And no, I'm not talking about the one that is a spin-off to the anime. I'm talking about the one that he hangs out with a samurai. Yes, the manga is called Tono and Stitch, and the premise is that instead of Stitch crash landing in modern Hawaii, Stitch would crash land in Sengoku-era Japan. And the samurai warlord who first discovers him gradually grows a bond throughout the volumes. And of course, a big part of it is because he loves Stitch's chaotic charm and even refers to him as the Blue Tanuki. On a side note, apparently the only Stitch characters that do appear in the manga outside of Stitch himself is Leroy from Leroy and Stitch, making it his first ever appearance after his debut. And on top of that, Dr. Hamsterville himself also made a quick appearance. The manga series was published in 2020 in Japan, but it did get localized and it was released in America a year later under the title of Stitch and the Samurai. Considering the little ball of chaos that Stitch is, the fact that he hung out with a samurai in ancient Japan is something that I feel like is surprising, but shouldn't be surprising at the same time.